Hello and welcome to The Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, your daily space for understanding current affairs in a simple, engaging and UPSC focused way. It's August 7, 2026. Today it is the National Handloom Day and today's edition features two important themes for your mains preparation. First, we look at the National Handloom Day 2026 and explore how India's traditional weaving sector can become a source of livelihoods, exports, cultural preservation and inclusive economic growth. Next, we turn to the creamy layer debate in the SC/ST reservations, a complex issue involving social justice, equality, constitutional provisions, and the continuing purpose of affirmative action. We also bring you mains valuation materials from today's current affairs, useful data, reports, examples, case studies, and constitutional insights to help you write richer and more analytical answers. And finally, we will wrap up the session with prelims pointers for your upcoming prelims 2027 examination. So let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome back to Analyst. I hope all of you are doing well, especially on this day where we celebrate 7th August as the National Handloom Day. This is exactly why today's very first article we will start with the significance of this day, because our Union Textile Minister has published a very good article regarding the status of the handloom sector in the country. So from the perspective of prelims, where we have to understand what are the schemes and the initiatives from the government of India to promote handloom, to the dimensions of GS1, Indian culture, welfare government schemes, and GS3, topics of inclusive growth on employment, we will try to understand why today is actually as equivalent to any other day that we celebrate. So the thing is that 7th August has been celebrated for National Handloom Day for the past 12 years. So this is 12th Handloom Day, and this is where, if we talk about the entire textile sector, handloom actually constitutes a very niche sector. When we talk about the textile sector, we already know that it is the second largest employer in the country just after Indian agriculture. So you can also understand the amount of traditional artisans who use their handlooms to produce beautiful saris, shawls across the country. So much so that yesterday night, our Prime Minister actually released a video on Instagram where he set a trend, "Get ready with me," GRWM video, in which he encouraged all of us to try the handloom products of our country. In front of him, if you see, there are various handlooms products which are actually sourced from various parts of the country, which he is trying to promote as a Prime Minister. Just imagine the economic significance of the handloom sector in general. So suppose you have gotten one mains article where you have to write a comprehensive mains answer. So firstly, we have to start with definitions. So when we define, we have to be very clear with the difference between handloom, handicraft and powerloom. Firstly, understand that handloom refers to the textile produced, right? If you talk about the entire textile sector, I already told, handloom is a special subsect of that. Okay. So those textiles which are produced on hand operated looms, not on machines or on power, those are known as handloom products. When we talk about the power loom, this is mechanized weaving, where we use mechanized and automated machines. For example, talk about the t-shirt that I am wearing and most of us wear in day-to-day lives. These are commercially and mass produced products, right? These are not made or weaved by hands, by weavers or traditional weavers, right? We actually use this kind of textiles because these are cheaply available. Also, this is widely available in the markets. So this is where we understand the difference firstly between powerloom and the handloom. Also, when we talk about handicrafts, handicraft can be a chair, it can be a toy, it can be any other artisan product apart from textiles. Textiles, now we generally use that to wear, to be comfortable, right? So this is where we have to also differentiate between handicraft sector, because handicraft is a separate topic altogether. Here we are only discussing about the handloom sector, because if we want to become a developed country by 2047, India not only needs to focus on agriculture, India not only have to focus about the broader industry in general or the service sector, we have to also identify the various subsectors. For example, within agriculture, we have a subsector known as food processing sector, which is known as the sunrise industry. Also, between the intersection of agriculture and industry, somewhere lies the handloom sector, because handloom artisans, they generally use traditional crops such as cotton, wool, even silk, right? And this is where they transform using their own skill, which is actually a part of our heritage. And sometimes when we are actually very skilled as a country, we have seen how India actually dominated the entire handicraft handloom market since centuries and even for thousands of years. Because heritage is actually an economic asset. So starting from the Indus Valley civilization, where even in 2026 prelims, there was a question on the evidence of spindles and the handlooms in the various parts of the sites of IVC. Be it Harappa, be it Kalibangan, be it anywhere, right? We mostly find evidences of spinning within the homes of those times. So just imagine, so this starts as, local industry or household industries, where mainly if you talk about the entire sector, from centuries we have seen the dominance of men and women in this sector producing beautiful art and craft handloom products. So this is where we also have exported to Mesopotamia, later to even the Roman Empire, where the Cholas actually exported a lot of handloom products there. Also we find during the Mughal times the evidence of muslin, which you can actually fit within a matchbox. After then you actually saw the advent of the Europeans, mainly the British, who actually decommercialized us when we talk about the handloom sector and the traditional sector here. So therein we understand that India have had already a very rich history of handloom heritage. It is also evidenced by the amount of handlooms, the variety of handlooms that you can find in almost all parts of the country. Starting from Kashmir, where the Kashmir Pashmina wool is actually very famous, to the Kulu shawl, to the northeastern products such as Muga silk, Baluchari sari. If you talk about the eastern India, when we talk about southern India, we know about the Kanchipuram silk. So if you talk about the entire country, even if you look at the western coast, there are so many products when we talk about our traditional handloom products, right? So this is where right now, if you understand that in the age of social media, these products are actually becoming very, very famous. This is also evidenced by our Prime Minister, who showcased them in his own Instagram reel. So this is where we have to realize one thing, that in the 21st century, since almost everything is monetized, why not India capitalize on this? Why not we can transfer our culture, which we are already experts in, into something that we know as economic capital? Because when we look into the data, right now, this will be the data that we have from 2023 from the Ministry of Textiles, from the Government of India. If you look at the data, you will be able to appreciate it, why we want to promote this madly right now. Firstly, we know that India is the world's largest cottage industry. What do you mean by cottage industry? These are actually household factories. You can understand, you go to one village in Orissa or in Tamil Nadu, which has been actually crafting these handloom products for decades, for centuries, for thousands of years. So if you see in that household, that kind of art is actually passed on from generations to generations. And therein we have the term cottage industry. These are actually very small scale industry. Maybe only one person is working there, or 2% is working there, or the entire family is working there, right? And producing the products, where their products are even exported. How much is the worth? Almost $11 billion. So this means that we are actually in high demand abroad. Who are actually buying from us? USA, UAE, Spain, mostly the ultra rich and even the moderate classes there buy our products, because they increase the aesthetic value of their homes, offices, and so on. Also, when we talk about the cottage industry and the number of people who are working in, there are around 3.52 million workers. It is a concern that over a period of time, the workers' numbers are declining because of lack of economic opportunity, which we will discuss later on. But we have to also appreciate the fact that they have around 2.8 million handlooms on which they are operating. And you will be very surprised to hear this, that 72% of the workers are actually women. Over 2.54 million women workers are actually involved in weaving, and in the rural areas where these cottage industries are more prominent, these women actually are very powerful when we talk about transforming the handloom sector of that particular region. Also, when we talk about the produce that they produce, generally they use natural items, raw materials which are sourced from nature, right? They leave very little waste. In one word, they are actually very sustainable. They are eco-friendly in nature too. Also, now when we talk about how handloom has also helped regional development, and in this way we see saris are actually, when we talk about the handloom sector, very widely produced from West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Tripura. These states cumulatively actually try to attribute around 80% of the total production. Also, when we talk about the category of shawls, Assam dominated. When we talk about traditional garments, northeastern states and Tamil Nadu dominated. For example, when we talk about the Assam, you have heard of the gamosa, right? So that is also very popular there, which our Prime Minister already has wore during the COVID pandemic also as a mask. Also, when we talk about the household linens, this is where Assam and West Bengal dominate. So you understand, for these states, handloom is a very important sector, and this is why it is the world's largest cottage industry, right? So this means that we have to right now appreciate as to what the government of India is doing right now for the sector, because firstly, we are celebrating 2nd August as the National Handloom Day. In itself, it is a very significant event. So what I feel that instead of national, we already should call it, World Handloom Day, because whenever India celebrates something as National Day, it already translates that to an international level. One example is our International Yoga Day. So maybe in the future, we can celebrate this National Day as an international day in the future. So firstly, let us understand how come government is actually talking about the economic potential so much, because it has various government initiatives to promote the sector. Firstly, when we talk about the authenticity plus trust of the handloom products, if at all they are handloom made, or if at all they are actually genuine in nature, what the government has done? Government has created the handloom mark. So it will be actually be trying to identifying the handlooms and giving them certificates, so that exporters can easily export them to countries such as US and EU, especially, who have very high standards of quality. If they see that child labor was used, if they see some chemical was used, if they see some counterfeiting or copy paste designs were used, they will straight away cancel not only that particular handloom, say cottage industries exports, but maybe the entire village exports. So this is where government of India takes this kind of things very seriously, right? So handloom mark is kind of enforced, right, where we already have around 30,000 registrations. India Handloom brand is also promoted, wherein we will see later on how there are various categories of handlooms, which also helps to establish that trust and authenticity. Also, GI, geographical indication registrations are done. Already we have covered a lot on GI tags, right? So those tags are given to various individuals, areas where we actually produce very high quality products. So those GI tags which are actually handloom in nature, remember, all GI tags are not handloom in nature, right? Even Darjeeling tea, which is having GI tag, that is not handloom in nature, right? But here, when we talk about the GI registration, so the government of India protect handlooms linked to a specific geographical origin, right? And also have various product logos, so that they have better visibility abroad. Also, when we talk about the Act, we have a 1985 Handloom Act, which actually protect weavers from various encroachment, mainly the encroachment in terms of their patent rights. Whenever there is a particular handloom design, or when we talk about Kanchipuram silk sari, right? So there obviously is a sophisticated art which has been transformed or say passed on from centuries, right? So we have to protect that. We have to give that kind of protection to the weavers, because they do not know too much about the patent rights. But this National Act of 1985 will be guaranteeing that. Also, when we talk about a government program known as a National Handloom Development Program, so herein the government is providing around 30 crores to develop around 10,000 handlooms, hence boosting the cottage industry sector, boosting the employment generated. Also, we have market access initiative such as trade fairs, export incentive, and finally raw material support, wherein 15% subsidy is given to any household or any cottage industry which is actually doing the business of handloom. So for example, if the cost of the cotton is 100 rupees, the government will be giving say around 15 rupees, right? Also, any kind of transportation cost will be discounted by the government. So it actually kinds of bring the cost of doing business for them. So various other government initiatives such as the government e-marketplace. Government e-marketplace makes sure that on this government website, right, on this government website, the cottage industry in the handloom sector and the various artisans, they can directly go and they can create their own stores, right? And sometimes maybe some government offices will be purchasing some textiles, or say someone maybe in any part of the country, even you can go on to this portal and maybe you can look into the various handicrafts which are available there and also the handlooms which are available there. So this gives a government portal for them. Next, we have this scheme which gives around 90% subsidy on the basis of any capital machinery that you want to buy for your handloom sector. For example, say you are a traditional artisan who is trying to weave the silk. So sometimes we cannot be totally 100% dependent on our hands, right? Because we have to also talk about our productivity, right? So that is why we sometimes use some small machines, small tools which can actually automate some part of the weaving process. So therein 90% cost is actually given by the government. Also, the Vishwa Sutra collection is actually where we understand the government has been giving various technological support, various support such as marketing, branding, etc. Also, in the recent times we have seen how there have been various skill upgradation training in weaving. So you know that traditional arts or handloom involves a sophisticated skill, right? Sometimes this can be traditional in nature, I mean the skills which have been passed on from centuries. Also, there can be some other kind of skills. What are those? These are digital marketing. These are various scopes of branding and also about various advertising campaigns so that their products are actually exported. While our handloom sector and the people there are experts in the traditional part, they lack in this modern skills approach. So they generally need various technical skills. Even right now we are teaching AI and the very basic use of AI and how it can actually increase the exports in the same. A recent case have been also demonstrated in Assam in the Kamrup district, right? Apart from that, this very article, editorial, is talking about some best practices. For example, we have in India right now improved loom design. Maina loom in Assam is one of them, which is actually a little bit of technical in nature also. We also have the Chitranjan handloom right in Sivsagar. Center of Excellence has been set up for handloom technology. Even various IITs are in collaboration as to how we can smoothen and increase the production. Also, over a period of time, start from the Indus Valley civilization to around British times, where we did not use too much of technology. So back then it was around handloom 1.0. Gradually we started using small technologies, right? So gradually we went on to handloom 2.0, 3.0, and finally right now in the age of AI, where we can actually automate everything. For example, the marketing, the branding, the obtaining of the certificates from the government, applications for patents. So this is where right now, when we also combine, most importantly, digital marketing, listing on various platforms such as Amazon, Flipkart. So this is where we need technology. So this is where AI enabled monitoring and even one new technology such as Vision Next. Also recently TCS has collaborated with the government of India to pass on such AI level skills to the handloom sector. So these things take care that going forward we have so many government initiatives supporting them. Even we have a Handloom National Hackathon 2026 wherein various skills initiatives can be showcased. But so far I have been giving you a very warm and happy picture, right? But everything is not that good because there are various issues when we talk about our Indian handloom products. Firstly, when we talk about the various types of handloom products according to the India Handloom brand, which we discussed as one of the government initiatives, if you remember, to increase the brand visibility, attractiveness, digital marketing. You know, most of us firstly are not aware. Most of us who are from the handloom sector are not aware that such initiatives, these very initiatives, they exist in real life. Because mostly, if you understand their nature, since independence, right, their productivity has been declining, demand for their products have been declining because not a lot of focus have been given on actually to promote their products within the domestic area. And also when we talk about exports, sometimes we understand there are only small and concentrated handloom sectors in some concentrated areas, say of West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, and various other states such as Assam. They are only prosperous in nature. You have heard na, that when we talk about the MSP, while MSP is implemented in all parts of the country, there are only some states such as Punjab, Western UP, and Haryana who are actually getting most benefits of the MSP. Similarly, this happy picture, you know, are applicable for actually some of the most popular varieties of handlooms, like the Kanchipuram saris, right? And this is where we understand what about the various other types of handlooms. Even if you understand there are so many different kinds of handlooms, even when we talk about the tribal sectors, right? So what about them? So firstly, awareness and low level of implementation is actually one very big concern. Next concern is actually when we talk about authenticity. In India, almost everything can be faked, right? So that is where various handloom and traditional weavers in Telangana were actually facing a crisis back in 2025, right? Also, when we talk about globalization, we know that we live in the era of mass production, where clothes can be manufactured very cheaply. But when we talk about the price of the handloom products, they are actually very expensive in general. So what about the competition from handlooms with reference to Mexico or say other parts of Latin America or even China or Vietnam? They also have their own handloom sectors. So sometimes we suffer due to globalization. We definitely are benefiting due to higher exports, but on the other hand, we are also suffering. Also, when we talk about the sustainability, sometimes some of the handloom sectors have been found to be using, you know, various polluting sources, dumping a lot of wastes, using chemicals, and this is where sometimes even US and EU ban our products. Technology is a concern not all of us can actually afford. If you understand already, the price is actually a competition. The handloom weavers, they have very thin margins. Let us actually talk about that in the next one. But before that, we also have a demand issue. You know, right now, the youth, and if not the youth, but the entire market in general, is very temporary in nature. We live in the world of fast fashion. Soon, something which is in fashion, that will run out tomorrow, right? So this is the reality right now. So the need for innovation, design changes even in the handloom sector is real, which is why sometimes they lack skills, which is where we have to reward them with that. And at the end of the day, when we talk about the real problem, the real issue is not our craftsmanship. It is actually insufficient value capture. So imagine a handloom artisan who is weaving a sari. So firstly, that person has to procure raw material. She has to also do the weaving, finishing, design, look for transportation facilities, branding, wholesaler margin, for example, she will be selling to a nearby shop, right? So wholesaler margin has to be given, retailer margin has to be given, platform fees if she is listing on Amazon, Flipkart, they sometimes charge around 30 to 40% of the overall price, final price. Commission costs are there, export costs are there, so many costs are there. At the end of the day, hardly the weavers get around 5 to 8% return. This is from private market research. So this means that even when we talk about so many famous GI products and the handloom within them, the actual at the end of the day, the money in the hand is actually very low. So this is exactly where we have to right now move away from already existing welfare schemes to giving them much more better expertise. We have to equip them with better entrepreneurial skills. We have to give them bank credit so that they can actually not worry about the pricing factor and so many other things, while they can actually focus on branding, marketing, designs, where the government of India should set design resource centers at every districts of the country, so that there are various private sector people, maybe from the textile industries, who will be training the various handloom artisans in variety of technologies. Also, when we talk about technology, we should be making the technology friendly for the weavers. So this is where the role of various small equipment, small capital comes up. Also, when we talk about building the trust and the credibility, so our handloom sector already suffers a lot of criticism when we talk about the fake products, counterfeit products, products made from child labor. So firstly, let us actually give the weavers an opportunity to give them some online IDs, or say some handloom IDs, where these IDs will be tracked with reference to the quality of their products, the extent of their production, the export destinations, everything will be linked to that ID. Also, when we talk about traceability, then only global countries and other kind of brands will be interested in buying our handlooms. And finally, the magic bullet will be to infuse handloom into our tourism. Because when we talk about the tourism, right, if you have gone to any hilly areas, or say some heritage historical tourist place, you have observed that your say cab driver always takes you to some local handloom shop, but most often those shops are actually very big shops, posh shops. Why not we take the tourists to small shops, small cottage industries, so that they are also actually encouraged, right? So these are the small steps we need to take. Already we are in this circular textile revolution, wherein we are actually reusing the waste to produce better handlooms. So this is the broader context of the handloom sector today. I want all of you to write this mains answer right now before moving on to the next one. So let us start with the next, where we will understand recently the Supreme Court is looking into various petitions which are actually arguing for the implementation of creamy layer, just like the OBC's reservation model that we follow in the country, in the SC and the STs. So this is where let us actually understand why the center has told the Supreme Court in an affidavit that the creamy layer principle does not apply to scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. So from your prelims perspective, the basic constitutional dimensions, and for your social justice, social issues, reservation policy, fundamental right, let us try to understand this topic from the very basics. So again, when we talk about the context, so the Supreme Court, for many years have been hearing various petitions as to challenging some core aspects of scheduled caste and scheduled caste reservation. So the Supreme Court is hearing petitions that creamy layer should be implemented within SC/ST or not. On the other hand, the central government is telling that reservation is not a poverty alleviation scheme. Here we are not only talking about equality. Equality means that every opportunity should be equally available for everyone in the society. It is not the matter only regarding equality. It is also about equity. What does equity mean? Equity means that we already understand there are some groups of the population of our country which have faced historical discrimination for thousands of years. Not only faced, but still facing. Right? I need not explain too much regarding this. The evidence of caste-based violence, caste-based sexual violence, discrimination, exploitation, land alienation, you can go on forever. That is still continuing right now. The same things which have originated from the later Vedic age. That thing is still continuing right now. The central government is telling that if you tell that the SCs and STs, they do not need reservations anymore, or say some of them, they do not need reservations anymore, maybe you are wrong. This is the central government who is telling, because we are still seeing historical discrimination right now. We are still seeing social inequality in the society, where we talk about the various IAS, IPS posts, where we talk about the senior government post. These are dominated by mainly the upper castes. Also, when we talk about the inclusiveness in education and the public service, this is actually still lagging behind the common trend, the common people, right? Also, when we talk of the representation in decision making, where at the state legislative assemblies, at the parliament, while the reservation of seats are there, but at the end of the day, the representation is not done in a vocal way, in a way that should actually try to reduce the social inequity. So this is what I'm trying to reiterate, the main stance of the central government when we really talk about the objectives of reservation. Now, when we talk about the constitutional dimension, this is where prelims becomes very important. So we have Article subclause 4, which gives socially and educationally backward classes plus SCs and STs various special provisions, mainly for educational attainment and securing admissions. So when we talk about Article 16 subclause 4, this is where public employment comes up, and reservation of OBCs, SCs, STs, EWAs also comes into picture. Also, when we talk about Article 341, this is where the president will be notifying various scheduled castes. 342 tells that the president will be notifying scheduled tribes. So this means that the parliament has to come up with a central list of SCs and STs. So this is why the parliament or the central government becomes involved, and this is why the central government has to go to the Supreme Court and clarify as to why we are not introducing the creamy layer concept. For example, creamy layer concept actually talked about the OBCs. Right? So basically this term was introduced by Satyanathan Commission in 1971 to actually denote some classes of people who were actually socially backward, but right now due to government jobs, business, or various other areas in which they have increased their monetary wealth and also social prestige, so maybe they do not need any reservations any further. So this is the main philosophy behind the creamy layer concept. You know that in the Indira Sawhney judgment in 1992, the Supreme Court directed that the creamy layer, the well-settled people within the OBC population, should be excluded from any quota or reservation benefits. It made sense, no issues. And also, you know, this was indirectly applied to the SC/ST population also when we talk about reservations in promotions, right? So in this judgment, Supreme Court kind of hinted that this maybe will be also applicable to SC/ST communities too, right? So as of now, what the central government has done, central government has defined that the creamy layer would be eligible for those people who are actually earning more than 8 lakh rupees per year. So they will be falling under creamy layer. They won't be getting any quota benefits. Okay? What happens to the people below 8 lakh rupees limit annually? So they will be actually getting the quota benefits. So here we are talking about one monetary figure, right? Now, again, when we talk about applying this same creamy layer concept in the SC/ST reservation case, this can be controversial in nature. Now, it is very bad for anyone to compare the discrimination faced between the OBCs and the SCs and the STs. But it is widely recognized by many quarters of the population, including various constitutional experts, that as of now, the SCs and the STs, even if they have made some economic advancement, they are still considered as backward. Because we have to differentiate the two things, that is economic poverty and social oppression, right? So firstly, when we talk about economic poverty, talk about a person who is actually from an SC community, right? So for example, say that person has struggled very hard, right? And has become an IAS officer. So naturally, you know, with age, with time, maybe the income will increase of this IAS officer who is from this SC background, right? So maybe that person can gradually uplift himself from poverty. Now consider another person, right? Another person who is also an IAS officer, but that person is from general. So what happens? When we talk about promotions right now, say after around 20 years of public service career, you know actually who will be having the greater career progression? According to data, it is a general candidate who will be leading maybe ministries, departments later on in their career. So what actually is meant in this argument by the center is that economic backwardness can be temporary, no issues, right? Even if someone who has become an IAS officer from the SC community, that person still can face future discrimination in his office, in front of various politicians, in various other places, even in public places, right? So there is one very unrelated example that in Tamil Nadu, there was an instance I read that there was a government school where most of the upper caste school children went. And in that same school, in the midday meal program, a Dalit cook used to cook the food. One day, many students refused to have food cooked by the Dalit cook, right? It is not due to poverty or anything else. It is due to social oppression. This thing is still persisting. It does not matter how much your income is. It is because it is rooted in historical discrimination. The same comparison can be directly, indirectly also be attributed to the Jews. You talk about the Jews, how rich are they? They dominate the entire world. They control almost all of the major political decisions. But at the end of the day, they still face stigma, stereotypes, discrimination. So this is what we have to understand, that these historical things, they do not go away so easily, right? Intergenerational inequalities, they persist forever. So simply excluding from creamy layer or implementing that creamy layer is not that easy, right? So if you look into the Group A, Group B, Group C and various other services, you see the representation of the SCs and the STs, right? These are actually quite low. If you go below the groups, see, their structure or their representation actually increases. So this means that they're actually not allowed, maybe via institutional forces, where various indirectly forces to get promoted. The same can also be seen in the central university jobs. So this means what? This means that not always we have to see and look before the economic wealth or monetary value or your salaries or your investment in stock, bonds. These do not alleviate you from your actual, say, historical inequalities that you have faced, and the same thing which you are facing right now. But definitely, when we talk about the other view, right, we definitely have various people who have been misutilizing the reservation principle. Firstly, there are various general populations who convert into SCs, and the STs via illegal means, they obtain fake certificates. That is a different case altogether. But when we talk about the SC population themselves, now suppose there is an IAS officer. He has sent his daughter to the US for masters and even before that for bachelors also. And suddenly the officer wants his daughter to prepare for UPSC and avail the benefit of the SC category. So this is where things go actually wrong. So this is why, there have been so many Supreme Court petitions which is arguing that not everyone within the SCs or the ST community should be getting the benefit. While the benefits, the reservation policy, affirmative action is all fine, nothing wrong with that. But the thing is that not everyone should be getting the benefits, because there are some classes, right, which have actually had already some good attainment or educational attainment, some good careers in their life after that also. Why someone is using reservation, right? Especially in cases of jobs, right? That can become a little bit of controversial. This is why in the state of Punjab versus Devendra Singh 2024 case, the Supreme Court did not talk about the creamy layer. The Supreme Court gave a very good advice, that is to go for sub-classification. Sub-classification means, if we talk about, say, for example, there are 100 SC communities in India. and 100 ST communities in India, right? So we know that all of the communities have faced historical injustice and is still facing. But there will be, say, for example, 3 or 4 or maybe 10 out of these who are already well settled. Their generations, say 1-2 generations, are also well settled. So they do not need any reservation. So what we can do? We can actually collect data regarding them. Data regarding what? Data regarding what is the, say, salary that you want. Are you in the government services? Actually, you get a lot of perks and benefits. Are you having wealth from various businesses? Do you have, say, a car? Do you have, say, other kind of vehicles? So looking into all of these factors, mainly the economic factors, right, and some of the social factors. So this is where the role of the states come in. The state should be creating such sub-classification based on the data, right? So this should be based on various objective reasons. Similarly, Telangana did that, various other states are also doing that, though there are actually various controversies behind the state lists also. But the main philosophy is that the Supreme Court has actually allowed us to go and do the sub-classification, not the creamy layer part as of now. Also, the Supreme Court overruled an earlier judgment, the E.V. Chinnaya. So this case told that SCs and STs are actually an homogeneous group, but that is not. What do you mean by homogeneity? When we mix water with salt, can you see the salt particles when the actually, say, salt dissolves? No, right? That is an homogeneous solution. But when we talk about the SC and the ST population, there are so many types of castes within the SCs itself. There are so many tribal population with distinct language, distinct culture, distinct regions. So they cannot be told as a homogeneous unit, right? So that is where we have to understand this does not hold. So this is why we need more empirical data. And maybe a good solution right now is to go for sub-classification instead of going via an 8 lakh or 10 lakh or whatever lakh creamy layer or income criteria. So this is where we have to talk about education and employment access. We have to talk about implementing the various schemes, policies already in force to improve that. Okay. Also, the Davinder Singh judgment 2024 focused on having good data, and this is where in the upcoming census such data should be given priority, right? Apart from various other experts and institutional suggestions, we also need to have a holistic socio-economic review. So in this case, the socio-economic caste census can help us in this direction, but here there are also various other issues associated with that, which we also discussed previously. In the comments, I want to know that if we go on to do this exercise wherein we are trying to do sub-categorization of the SC and the ST population, what can be the issues in the socio-economic caste census? I leave this question to all of you. Also, apart from that, we need to focus more on promotion and representation of SC and the ST population at our colleges, universities, bureaucracy, also the judiciary, right? There have been hardly very few judges when we talk about the SC and the ST communities at the Supreme Court level in the last few decades. Also, when we talk about the promotion angle, we have already seen that promotions from Group C to Group B, from Group B to Group A, these are actually very rare, especially in cases of SC and the ST populations. That should be focused upon. So this needs an institutional reform from within. Also, the National Commission on Scheduled Caste and the National Commission on STs, the scheduled tribes, should be having a greater say. They should not merely be a puppet authority of the government of India, right? And at the end of the day, sub-classification policies by more states should be done. Right now, Telangana have gone forward. We need much more better policies when we even talk about Telangana. When we talk about the other states, they have not even implemented. We have to do that in the spirit of the Davinder Singh 2024 judgment. So this was all for this one. Do practice the question and then move on to the mains value addition material. Well, the first article is actually a very unique article in this one, where you know that already in the mains value addition section, we give you various data, such as this one regarding the Indian school education system. If you look into the data, you will gradually understand how you can firstly use that in your GS2 paper concerning the topics of education, Also in GS4 you have social influence, and herein we mean how a child is brought up, firstly in her family, schools, and later on in the various other institutions. So herein the importance of schools are very important, right? So this means that right now in India, the second most important thing which I wanted to focus, as of now in India, a very interesting thing is happening. If you see at the table number 1, the total schools from 2014 to 2024 in the last 10 years, if you only look at 2014, 15 lakh schools almost, 2024, 14.7 lakh. So where is around 0.4 lakh school, right? Where has the 40,000 schools gone? They were closed or what? When we talk about the decline of the number of schools from the government sector, see, the decline is actually around 1 lakh. Just imagine, right? Almost 1 lakh schools, government schools have closed down. On the other hand, the teacher recruitment is actually quite much. Teacher recruitment is improving. That is good. Enrollment, if you see the enrollment of the students, right, till class 12, it has also gone down by around 2 lakh. So what you have to understand from your mains perspective, firstly, these are worrying figures. The number of total schools have declined. So we know that in India there are two types of schools, private schools and government schools. And government schools actually attribute around 1 lakh decline. So you understand, maybe more private schools have opened up and more government schools have shut down, right? If you see, we have around 1 lakh deficit of government schools, right? So this means that the data is reflecting that overall student enrollment is going down, government schools are closing down. So this means a very serious scenario, right? But here in this article, we are trying to understand a contribution is that the school closure is not automatically related to educational decline. So it means that these 94,000 government schools which have been closed down, it is not an indicator that our education quality is going down, right? This is what is happening right now. So if we want to increase the quality despite closing government school, what can we do? That is the main argument of this editorial, right? So this means that as of now, what we have to understand, that India's education is actually facing a very harsh reality, that the government schools are closing down, so that we have to focus on the next phase of our schooling, where we have to ensure every child gets access to a good school, right? Earlier, it was mainly the focus that we should be getting every child into a school, mainly because we had the Right to Education Act 2009, where it is actually constitutionally right now a fundamental right. But sometimes, when we have too much laws and regulations in place, the government do not have a very proactive approach. That's why the very static approach is that since it is mandated by law, let us actually get in all the students into the school. But this actually definitely increased a lot of schools, expansion of school infrastructure, but in real time the quality of education suffered. To increase that quality of education, what we have to do, we have to ensure that the government school enrollment which actually fell down, that must be supported by increase in the private education also. On the other hand, private education must be made much more cheaper, right? So grants should be given, right? Also school complexes should be made better. Consolidation of teachers, of resources must be done in a better way. Subject specialist teachers must be done, especially in the evolving areas of AI. Right now AI is also being taught in the schools, so that also should be developed. Laboratories, libraries, sports, peer learning and infrastructure all should be going hand in hand, right? So this means that we have to right now focus more on the quality aspect, because according to the National Education Policy 2020, this is where we have to understand that the schools are the cradles of the civilization right now. So this is where we should be focusing on more funding, more educational initiative. So this was mainly one article where you can just extract the data and understand the new phase of Indian education. Now the next article is one kind of best practice. When we talk about police reforms. Now in your GS2 paper, in the aspect of governance, you have the topic of police and the role of the civil services. So therein you already have seen there are so many issues with the policing system in the country, right? Be it custodial torture, be it violence, be it non-registration of FIRs, vacancies, police infrastructure such as lack of toilets, CCTV cameras. There are n number of issues, and in this case the Prakash Singh judgment is also very important, which is actually talked about as the foundation of the police reforms in India. Apart from this, there are so many other states which are actually doing very good in cases of such reforms. For example, the My Police Station initiative from Kerala. Firstly, what they are doing, they are actually putting the responsibility of the police station on the station house officers, right? And they will be entrusted to the sub-inspectors so that they can run the police station much more in a better way. And at the end of the day, the sub-inspectors actually know the ground realities very well, right? So they know what is going on in their own local town, in their own small village, and hence law enforcement can be done in a better way, right? Public-centric focus also can be done or implemented. Now, to improve the public-centric focus, right? Firstly, we are trying to, say in the state of Kerala, give them the mandatory training, mainly on the new cases of, say, use of deepfakes, AI, cyber frauds, digital arrests, right? Zero FIR. So those things are being done right now, right? Also monitoring and feedback based on the data and the technology, and finally improving the female participation in the police forces. Apart from this, all of the police stations across all of the states face this kind of allegation that the torture at the police station is unbearable. So this is where the custodial violence also will be checked under this My Police Station initiative. So if you're writing some way forward, or if you're writing some answer with reference to police station, in the conclusion you can put the Kerala government My Police Station initiative and get that extra marks. So now let us move on to the prelims pointers. So already you know that the parliament is in session and most important national issues are being discussed there. So our leader of opposition has taken up the issue of the Ken-Betwa River Link project and the overall impact of the project on the tribal population. So from a prelims perspective, firstly let us understand what do you mean by river linking, because UPSC loves asking most background information. We have to firstly understand that this concept of inter-basin transfer, I mean, if there is one river alongside the same, so you know that the area surrounding by the river is known as river basin. So this is where we understand if there are two rivers in nearby and if we want to connect them using canals, this is where we are connecting the two river basins in general, right? So this is not a new idea. It was proposed around 130 years ago by Sir Arthur Cotton, who was very popular for the Godavari and the Krishna River Valley dams, which improved irrigation in those areas. Also later, Sir M. Vishveshvarya also led this kind of idea, and later on K.L. Rao and Captain Dinshaw J. Dastoor expanded the scope in the 70s and the 80s, and they gave a broader plan. This plan was known as National Water Grid, or the greater project that is known as the River Interlinking Project. This is where the Ministry of Water Resources get involved, and as of India, this is the entire plan if you can see. So starting from 1 to 14, these are the total comprehensive river basins, if you can see in this map, which will be linked with each other. For example, if you just imagine, if you just see that we are trying to connect Ganga with Gandak, right? This is one interlink which we will be having in the future. But as of now, India has started working on this project mainly from the Ken and Betwa rivers, and we are trying to link that. So let us actually understand mainly from this region perspective, what will be the positives of this interlinking project. Firstly, when we talk about the interlinking of these river basins, it starts with building a dam. You know, dam stores water. A very huge dam has huge reservoirs which can store water properly, and that water can be controlled if we have excessive rainfall, hence we can prevent flood, or if there is less rainfall we can release the dam water and then we can prevent a drought, so our farmers will be protected. Also, say this area is broadly known as the Bundelkhand area, right, where already there is huge amount of water scarcity. Finally, if we talk about boosting water availability even for agriculture, so definitely farmers income will increase, rural income will increase, and later on overall rural development also takes place. Now, when we talk about this Ken and Betwa interlinking project, so where we have to understand that actually what we are trying to do here is transfer the water from the surplus basin. Surplus basin is from the Ken River. We have surplus water there, and we will be transferring the water to a relatively lower plain land area where the river Betwa is there, right? So in essence what we are trying to do, we are trying to link these two rivers at this point where we are having the GOBARdhan dam. So this dam will be controlling how much water can enter or say exit this particular area, right? So if you also see very closely, here we have the Ken Gharial sanctuary. Gharials actually thrive on the Ken river, right? And we also have the Panna Tiger Reserve, which is actually where the Ken river also passes through this reserve. So if you understand, if you are trying to have this link where we have the Betwa river here and we have the Ken river here, so definitely it is actually a very time consuming affair. A lot of money will be involved, lot of water also will be involved here, right? So definitely we understand various areas and villages and rural areas will be definitely be benefited. So it will be giving around 49 million cubic meters of drinking water to the 1.4 million people in the both of the states of UP and Madhya Pradesh. Now, when we talk about the total forest area that will be inundated with water, it will be how much? Around 9,000 hectares of total forest area and 4,000 area of the Panna Tiger Reserve where tigers actually reside very peacefully. They go to the nearby streams and the rivers of even the Ken and they get their drinking water. Just imagine that this water level increases to this level. So definitely the tigers won't have anywhere else to go. So this means that here we are right now talking about the issues of this kind of projects. So where this project has three things to go with: giving water, providing water for irrigation and drinking. So that is where we understand that drinking water will be supplied to both of the states of Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Both of them will be getting the drinking water, and definitely this is a very, very important part of their lives because women particularly there have to walk miles just to fetch water. Also, when we talk about the ecological parameters, we cannot ignore the impact of this project on the Panna Tiger Reserve and the Gharial Sanctuary, right? And finally, when we talk about the people, about us, this is where we understand this is a very big area which will be displaced. You know, this is the entire corridor of the link or the canal which will be constructed. Definitely it is passing through various land, and whose land are all of this? Definitely the tribals and most of the locals also. So there have been the construction projects which is already ongoing, and there have been allegations that many tribal forests are inundated, tribal lands taken away, and sometimes if they are taken away, rehabilitation, compensation is not properly done, right? So definitely under Forest Rights Act, you know, the forest dwellers and the other forest dwellers. The forest dwellers are generally from the ST population, where they have their own right to cultivate, have their own land ownership, and if any developmental project is done on their land, permission has to be taken from the Gram Sabha or their own consensus has to be taken based on the individual rights and the community rights of the Forest Right Act, right? There has to be proper compensation mechanism if the land is taken away for public purposes. So compensation has to be properly paid. That is not being done, right? Also, if we are covering say one canal we are trying to build across a village and there are 10 households. We are giving compensation to only 4 households. We are not covering all of the eligible families. So this is what is the major concern right now. And the broader concern, if you know, is also environmental in nature. For example, there have been previous or past instances of river channelization in other parts of the world. In Florida and in the Soviet Union, I mean the USSR, present day Russia. So you see that, for example, particularly if you look at the Aral Sea, you know, back in 1977, the Aral Sea used to look like this, right, during the USSR. And this is where the Kazakhstan country is also here, right? Uzbekistan is on the southern side. But when we talk about 1986, if you see, the area mainly in the northern side, it has started declining. Further, the area is declining. Further, if you see, right now, the present times, 2013 also, see, right now, there is no Aral Sea because most of the surplus river water has been diverted away. Hence, nothing to actually fill up the sea. The same case can also be talked about in India also, in the rest of the part of the world. So this is what I wanted to let you know, because there also is a PYQ related to Aral Sea back in 2012-13 prelims. So let us move on to the next topic now, where the next topic is mainly regarding the non-banking financial companies and their regulation. So understand everything very carefully. Firstly, what do you mean by an NBFC? In the name itself, it is told that it is non-banking in nature. So firstly, we have to understand that a bank, you know, accepts demand deposits like your savings account. It is also part of the payment system, UPI systems and various things. Also, the banks can issue checks. You have a checkbook. Also, loans can be obtained from the banks. Financial intermediation can be done at the banks. Banks are also regulated by the RBI. Apart from this, there are so many other things also when we talk about the banks. But when we talk about an NBFC, firstly, it is under the Companies Act. So essentially, it is a private company which is registered under the Companies Act. In some cases, it can also be a public company. But the main difference is that of their business activities. They are mainly involved in financial activities. They are not involved in goods trading or goods exporting, those kind of things. They are involved in places where money is involved. And there are so many places apart from banking, I mean deposits, loans, checks, there can be other places also where there can be some financial companies operating. For example, there can be some home loan companies, there can be some business loan companies, there can be some personal loan companies also. Talk about Bajaj Finance, right? It is not a bank. Remember, Bajaj is not a bank. It is an NBFC, right? Also, talk about the gold loan companies, Muthoot Finance, right? These have a specialized area. I mean, if you talk about Muthoot Finance, they only give you gold loans, right? So this means that they have a special expertise dealing with gold loans and dealing with their business. So this is why they are actually non-banking in nature and they are financial companies. Apart from this, you have also heard about GOBARdhan, which deals in stock, shares, debentures and various other instruments. There are various other companies also who deals in investments. NBFCs also deal in investments. So GOBARdhan and all those things are actually NBFCs in nature. Also, there can be asset financing such as handling equipment leasing, hire purchase arrangements, basically the businesses which involve money, financing. When we talk about construction equipments, the finances that you need for that. So that will be done by the NBFCs. Also various other aspects such as microfinance, semi-urban areas, or for example, say the needy companies, if you understand, these are small savings companies where depositors, they actually keep their deposits there. So this means that NBFCs have a wide range of financial activities. They are actually very different from banks. But so when we talk about, say, the deposit aspects, there are some NBFCs which actually accepts deposits, but most of them do not accept deposits. For example, the investment NBFCs, asset financing ones, they do not accept NBFCs, right? Or the gold loan, Muthoot Finance, Bajaj Finance, they do not accept deposits unless they are deposit taking NBFCs. Also, most often they are not part of the payment system also, because banks are generally part of the payment system. NBFCs cannot issue checks because they are not banks, right? So this is where we have to talk right now about how they are regulated in the country. Basically, RBI has three kind of classifications to classify NBFCs. Firstly, activity-based classification. I mean, NBFCs, they are involved in what kind of financial activities? Are they doing investment activity, loan activities such as credit companies? Are they financing infrastructure such as bridge, road, highways of the country? Are they having a company, that is NBFC, which is controlling various other companies? I mean, say the Tata Group is there. You know that there is TCS, there is Tata Motors, there is Tata, so many other things. Aviation is there, right? Air India is part of it. So Tata Group is a comprehensive family. There can be some specialized NBFCs which have shares of all of those subgroups, right? So in essence, these NBFCs become a core investment company, right? Also, there can be NBFC microfinance institution. I already told about the Nidhi companies, right? The chit fund companies. They are actually encouraging savings at a small scale from marginal workers, housemaids, even so many other marginalized sections of the population. They daily, on a day-to-day basis, they may be able to save 50 rupees. So every day they will be depositing 50 rupees there. So these are actually one kind of NBFCs which are liability based and they take deposits. The only exception in the NBFC category which can accept deposits are deposit taking, and most of them, almost all of them, are actually non-deposit taking in nature. Apart from them, there are also NBFCs known as factor NBFCs, which actually talk about dealing with finances, money or loans related for a company who would love to purchase some raw materials. Sometimes some companies do not have the money to buy raw materials. They can get the money from the factor ones, and mainly for residential buildings, construction projects. So loans also need to be taken. So therein the housing finance companies also come in. But for our topic here today, what is the most important thing you know? That the Tata Sons, right, is an NBFC which is classified as a core investment company. And they are actually one of the biggest NBFCs in India, right, with a lot of funding. Now, when an NBFC becomes actually very huge in nature, so definitely they have to be monitored in a very serious way. For example, say NBFCs, say, who are in the infrastructure sector. There was an NBFC known as ILNFS. Back in 2017-18, there was a huge crisis known as the ILNFS crisis. ILNFS was known as India's largest infrastructure NBFC. What it did, you know? For the private projects, for the government projects. Based on what? Highways, airports, bridges, all things that you can think about infrastructure. The money was actually gotten from the big banks in the country and ILNFS. Right? So ILNFS became so big that almost all of the new infrastructural projects was funded by them. And you can imagine that this is a private company. Definitely there can be instances of corruption, and there can be various other misgovernance. So you understand, if there is one NBFC who is that important and funding India's top infra projects, and if that company collapses, what will happen to those infrastructure projects? What will happen to India's infrastructure scenario? So this is one sector I'm talking about, infrastructure. There are so many other sectors such as gold loan sector, right? There are other NBFCs in, like Bajaj Finance, which also gives a lot of personal loans. Just imagine if there is some allegations of corruption there. So what will happen? Not only that company will go down, we will have a systemic shock. What do you mean by systemic shock? It is like a domino effect. If For example, in the case of IL&FS, if the infrastructure segment or say sector collapsed, it will lead to the collapse of the bridges, railways, highways. It will lead to the collapse of logistics sector. Employment will not be generated. GDP will fall down and the entire economy will be affected. So that is why RBI has come up with a scale-wise layer of regulation. This is where NBFCs which have less than 1,000 crore or less asset side, they will be classified into base layer. They are important but not that important. More NBFCs which has more than 1,000 crore asset size, they will be mainly consisting of non-deposit taking NBFCs. And in India, most of the big NBFCs are actually in the upper layer. Small set of NBFCs will be there which are significantly important from the perspective of systemic risk, right? So they need higher regulation, and as of now in India there is no NBFC in the top layer. So as of now there is not NBFC in that way that they will be categorized at that level. So in India, this is RBI's only some of the list of the upper layer NBFCs, right? So these are, if you see, these are mainly infrastructure companies. Some deposit taking NBFCs also there, such as Bajaj Finance. So this means that if something happens here, the entire country can collapse actually in real time. So this is why RBI has various rules. For example, firstly, this recent controversy is going on regarding Tata Sons, which is a code investment company which actually comes in 7th or 8th in the list. So this company has been facing some issues internally, and they do not any longer want themselves to be classified as NBFCs, because they know that RBI is very strict. Once you enter the upper layer of NBFCs, once you enter, for 5 years you cannot exit that. For 5 years your supervision on your bank account, accounts, balances, transactions, everything is monitored by the RBI. You can be doing good business, no issues, but RBI will be very strict with that. Also, since these are NBFCs, they deal with loans and capital, so definitely the NBFCs also have their separate capital adequacy ratio. This means that if some NBFC is giving risky loans, so separately safe capital such as investors' own money, the owner's own money should be kept separately, which is known as CET1, Tier 1 capital. So there must be more Tier 1 capital if you are having more risky loans. So this ensures that the system actually works and there is a higher survey or say surveillance of RBI on this kind of NBFCs. So this was all. Now let us move on to the next one, in which we are going to understand why in India as of now many Indians or households are actually pledging gold and getting more gold loans instead of just selling it. So let us understand why is the main thing that we have to understand for prelims information, because gold is one topic which UPSC has asked again and again, either as one standalone question. I mean, they can ask with reference to the price of the gold and the determinants of the price of the gold, and they can also ask you regarding inflation, appreciation, depreciation, and various other fiscal deficit and other kinds of economic parameters, and include gold as an asset, and they will try to test your knowledge, how well you actually understand how gold can operate as a safe haven asset. Because gold is considered to be the safest kind of investment in the world right now, right? Apart from various other things, obviously. But gold is considered one of the most safest agencies, right? So that is why, you know, people generally hold gold. But in India, the thing is actually very extreme. So if you actually try to understand that the total countries that we see on this list, US, Germany, Italy, France, if you combine all of their gold reserves, they come to be around 24,385. They are nothing in comparison to the golds that we have in our homes. Maybe you all have, and if you want to be philanthropic someday, you know where to send that gold, right? Okay, so you understand our Indian household has a lot of gold, even more than the big central banks of the world, right? And because we have to understand, mainly in India, it is a cultural thing that for our marriages, for our future, for various purposes, even for relative and show off, we actually hold gold. So, but the recent scenario has changed. As of now, we always have seen gold via a consumption demand lens, right? From a perspective where we buy gold for our jewelry, ornament, festivals and wedding, where we consume or use that gold. Right now, but in the age of, say, digitization, social media, since people are getting more aware, people right now know that instead of using only for consumption, why not use gold for investment in ETF, exchange traded funds, where you are not buying any physical gold. You are buying instead shares which are actually of a company which has actually bought gold for you. And you know what the company did? They actually listed on the stock exchange, right? So this is where we are buying more ETF, so we do not have to buy physical gold. If you want to buy physical gold, people are right now buying more gold bars, coins, right? And various other kind of investment products. If you can see right now, instead of jewelry, right, more gold is actually being bought in the form of investment, such as gold bar, gold coins. You cannot wear these, right, as jewelry. Also ETF and in industrial purposes. So this is where, even if you see, the jewelry demand is going down, gold bars, gold coins are actually increasing in demand in this figure. Right now, gold prices are actually increasingly going up. If you just look at 2021, gold was how much? 1,48,000. In 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it has increased by 1 lakh more. Just imagine that the increase in gold prices should be prompting people to sell more gold, hai na? Whenever you know by the basic demand and supply forces. So if the prices increase, your profits also increase. That is where you sell more gold. But people are not selling gold. People are actually taking more gold loans like right now in India. What they are doing, they are using it, their jewelry. They have a lot of jewelry in their homes. They are actually taking it to Muthoot Finance, various other gold loan shops, where you can actually keep your gold and get money in return. So you use that money, run your business, open a cafe, get huge profit and pay back the gold loan. So you keep the loan, you have a new business. So this is what we know as asset creation, right? So you create more assets, business and so on, right? And this is where, we understand the phenomena that the gold price already increased more in the recent times. This is where it also lets the people to get more loans and have their own businesses, right? So here, this is where we understand that the banks actually give a lot of loans also. The NBFCs also give a lot of loans. So this is where people get more loans from them. Now, when we talk about loans from the banks, we have to talk about a term that is known as loan to value ratio. So whenever you say have gold worth 20 lakh rupees, now you go to the bank, will the bank give you 20 lakh rupees? No, because it will give you only 18 lakh rupees. It will not give you the 2 lakh rupees, because the banks do not know you personally. The banks can say that, you have deposited your gold. After some months or years, maybe you will not be able to pay back my money. And then what I will do with your gold, 20 lakh rupees, right? I have to sell it. For selling, I have to incur some cost. There will be various other kind of costs associated with that. So this is where also maybe you will not be paying me interest. So that interest money is also lost. So there is actually a loss for the bank if the banks give you the exact amount for your collateral, that is gold here. That is why bank always cut down some ratio, right? This is what we also know as margin requirements from your qualitative tools of RBI to control money, right? This is how we have to link the concept, guys. And this is what also brings us to one more scheme, that is the gold monetization program. Gold monetization or deposit scheme is that where you deposit gold in, physical gold in the bank, and you actually earn interest on that, while you are actually owner of that, and you are also earning interest if you are keeping in the bank account. And the banks can use your gold for various purposes, right? For loaning, businesses, etc. So this is where you have to also differentiate between the various other aspects, such as gold jewelry. They are physical in nature, but you cannot earn interest on them. You cannot also trade them on stock exchange. Similarly, gold coin, gold bar you cannot exchange on the stock exchange, and also the same with gold monetization scheme, right? Also, when we talk about the physical gold need, it is mainly needed in jewelry, coin, bars and monetization scheme. It is not needed in ETF, and you do not earn interest in ETF, you earn stock market returns on ETF, right? So this was all for this one, and finally on to the last topic of the day, where we will understand that why recently the government has approved the GOBARdhan project worth 23,371 crore. So firstly, this is a concept or a scheme that is related to the concept of waste to wealth. You know, when we go to our agricultural villages, we find cattle, we find so many stubble after harvest, we find so many agricultural products at mandis which are wasted. If you go to the cities, you see there is organic municipal waste, right? Why am I showing you all this kind of waste? For example, cattle also produces cow dung, and various other animal waste products that we have. Why am I showing you these waste things? Because normally if you do not use these, they cause pollution. For example, talk about the stubble burning and the Delhi air pollution issue, right? Methane emission from the cattle, okay? Stubble burning, landfill, so these are the various issues. But when we can actually understand that we can use the same waste to generate something that we know as compressed biogas, the CBG actually comes from these sources only, such as crops, livestock, water waste, food waste. We use a technology that is known as anaerobic digester. What we do, in these tall containers, we seal the top, we put the waste first within it itself. So we put all the waste in it and we seal the top here. So no oxygen enters here. And here the wastes are decomposed without oxygen. That is why it is known as anaerobic digester, because there are some bacteria which decomposes this. And in this process there are various waste products also, such as carbon dioxide, H2S, water vapor, but the most important part is methane. We get methane here, which we can purify to 95%, and we can use that to generate more heat, electricity in our towns, right? You can also use as fuel as biomethane. Also, the waste product which is known as digested, not everything will be transformed to methane, right? Something will be wasted. That will be used as fertilizer, soil amendments, livestock breeding. So nothing is wasted actually in CBG technology. So this is where we have to differentiate that CBG, compressed biogas, is not the same as compressed natural gas. This is a fossil fuel, right? We should not be confusing between them. Why India needs the CBG right now? Firstly, because we have a lot of potential for generating wealth from waste. Secondly, we have to save a lot of money on the crude oil imports and natural gas imports, right? Because of the crisis which is going on. So bioeconomy must be promoted right now. And at the end of the day, why many plants are not running? Why many of these plants have not come up as of now? Because firstly, it is a very expensive process. It requires a lot of capital, equipment and money, right? And at the end of the day, the proper pipelines to transport the methane gas and everything is not properly delineated in the country, and that is exactly why the GOBARdhan project comes in. With around 23,000 crore, we will be firstly spending that most of the money on capital subsidy, that is, these plants are very expensive to set up. So around 2 lakh crore maximum capital subsidy, that is the tons of gas generated per day, will be kind of assured. Also, when we talk about the main compressed biogas, right, who will purchase it? At what price? What is the price? Everything should be properly clear to the plant owners, otherwise they won't be doing the investment. So this is also what the government assured, that your waste product and the final compressed biogas will be purchased by various people. That is the guarantee. Also, price is set by the government, right, in terms of million British thermal units. And when we talk about the pipelines, the plants firstly will be totally built from ground up. So the capital subsidy is given, that is why up to the tune of 2 crores. Then these plants will be coming up and pipelines will be built between various plants and the cities, and it will be linked to the broader city gas distribution. And finally, the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board will be overseeing all of these things. And at the end of the day, when we get the digested, it will be also fueling our circular economy. So right now, at the end of the day, just have a look at the comparison between various biofuels such as bioethanol, diesel, gas, compressed biogas and green hydrogen, and what is the feedstock, what is the main product, and whether they're renewable in nature or not. So finally, at the end, I want to thank you all for being a very patient audience. Please do attend the quiz which is following up, and till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.